Welcome to the Forgotten Kingdom, where legends whisper and time stands still. Tonight, we embark on a journey beyond the familiar tales of ancient civilizations, beyond the well-trodden paths of history, into a realm shrouded in mystery, as enigmatic as it is overlooked. This is the Forgotten Kingdom, land of hidden treasures and untold stories, land of mighty rulers and forgotten heroes, land where the past is not silent, but echoes through the ages. Let's pause here for a moment. The fire crackles softly, and we rest beneath the stars. The Forgotten Kingdom was never a mere footnote in history. It was a beacon of culture, a cradle of innovation, and often a force to be reckoned with. But while grand palaces elsewhere bustle with tourists, the ruins of this kingdom slumber in solitude, undisturbed, undiminished, unyielding. Here, wisdom was etched in stone. Here, art flourished, and knowledge was sacred. Here, even the humblest citizen could rise to greatness, and the gods walked among mortals. Let's pause here for a moment. The fire crackles softly, and we rest beneath the stars. This tale is not found in common lore. It resides in the whispers of the wind. It lingers in the shadows of crumbling walls. It speaks through artifacts that defy the passage of time. So, tonight, let us tread carefully through the mists of antiquity. Let us drink from the well of forgotten wisdom. Let us stand in awe beneath the same sky that witnessed greatness. Let us remember the Forgotten Kingdom, not as a lost civilization, but as a living testament to human ingenuity. And when dreams claim you, may they carry the weight of ancient knowledge, the thrill of undiscovered wonders, and the gentle hum of a world where magic and reality intertwined. Let's pause here for a moment. The fire crackles softly, and we rest beneath the stars. As he speaks, the flames seem to dance and form shapes, bringing his tales to life. Now, let our exploration begin. We step into a world where time itself seems to hold its breath. The air is thick with the scent of history, a fragrance both musty and sweet. Beneath our feet, the earth remembers the tread of countless generations. Each step we take an echo of those who came before. The Forgotten Kingdom stretches before us, a tapestry of contradictions. Mighty stone edifices stand in stark contrast to the delicate beauty of nature reclaiming its domain. Vines embrace ancient pillars, flowers bloom in the cracks of once grand plat. Let's pause here for a moment. The fire crackles softly, and we rest beneath the stars. Sunlight glints off golden domes and crystal-clear streams that wind through the remnants of streets and courtyards. In the heart of this lost realm, secrets await discovery. Every weathered inscription, every faded fresco tells a story of triumphs and tragedies, of love and loss, of a people who dared to dream beyond the confines of their time. Here, in the Forgotten Kingdom, the line between myth and reality blurs. Tales speak of rulers with the power to command the elements, of scholars who unlocked the mysteries of the cosmos, of artisans whose creations defied the laws of nature. Let's pause here for a moment. The fire crackles softly, and we rest beneath the stars. As we delve deeper into this ancient world, we find ourselves not mere observers, but participants in a grand narrative. The whispers of the past grow louder, urging us to listen, to learn, to understand. For in the story of the Forgotten Kingdom lies a reflection of our own journey, a testament to the resilience of the human spirit, the power of creativity, and the enduring quest for meaning in a vast and mysterious universe. Let's pause here for a moment. The fire crackles softly, and we rest beneath the stars. As our journey through the Forgotten Kingdom draws to a close, we carry with us more than memories. We bear the weight of newfound knowledge, the spark of inspiration, and the solemn responsibility to ensure that this once lost world is forgotten no more. For, in rediscovering the Forgotten Kingdom, we have not only unveiled a chapter of history, we have rekindled the flame of wonder that burns within us all. Let's pause here for a moment. The fire crackles softly, and we rest beneath the stars. And so, as the stars wheel overhead and the night deepens, we bid farewell to the Forgotten Kingdom. Not with sadness, but with gratitude, for we have been granted a glimpse into a world beyond imagination, a realm where the extraordinary was once ordinary. May the spirit of discovery that has guided us tonight continue to light our path, leading us ever onward to new horizons, new mysteries, and new understanding. Now, let us carry the Forgotten Kingdom in our hearts, and ensure that its legacy endures for generations to come. The sun rose early in Nubia. It did not ask for permission. It did not linger gently like spring in other lands. It struck a sharp, searing light at bent mountains, dried skin, and carved the earth like a blade to a bone. Let's pause here for a moment. The fire crackles softly, and we rest beneath the stars. A young Nubian boy, no more than 10, stumbles along the riverbank. His thin arms strain under the weight of reeds, bundled tightly against his chest. Sweat glistens on his dark skin, each bead a testament to the merciless heat. Behind him, clay homes cling precariously to the desert's edge, their mud brick walls a fragile barrier against the encroaching sands. To live here, in the kingdom of Kush, in the scorching stretches of Kerma or Napata, was to rise before dawn and beat the heat with labor. Children carried water jars across hills, their small feet leaving ephemeral prints in the dust. Mothers ground grain with hands blistered from stone, calluses a map of their daily toil. Fathers and uncles twisted iron in smoky forges, sparks dancing like fireflies in the oppressive air, while goats chewed dust behind them, finding nourishment where others saw only desolation. Food was not guaranteed. The Nile could flood, or it could not. And when it failed, so did the harvest. People learned to survive on millet, barley, goat's milk, fish, if the nets were kind, dates, if you had a cousin near ponds, meat only for ceremony or kings. A Nubian mother, her linen shawl draped loosely over her shoulders, kneels before a small fire. With practiced hands, she pours ground millet into a battered pot. The grain hisses as it meets the heated surface, a promise of sustenance. Nearby, her children huddled close, their eyes heavy with fatigue, but glimmering with contentment at the prospect of a meal. And yet, there was pride in the struggle. The people of Nubia walked tall, skin glistening, eyes sharp, their names sung in lineage, songs stretching back 1,000 years. You could not simply be in Nubia. You had to earn it. Through heat, through scars, through honor. Let's pause here for a moment. The fire crackles softly, and we rest beneath the stars. An elder, his skin as dark and weathered as the night sky, sits cross-legged before a small gathering of boys. His gnarled hands grip a wooden staff carved in the likeness of a lion, its mane flowing seamlessly into the curves of his fingers. As he speaks, his voice carries the weight of generations, each word a bridge between past and present. And there were kings, not distant pharaohs on golden thrones, but warrior rulers, men who bled beside their people in war and demanded loyalty from sun to moon. To disobey a Nubian king was to invite exile. Or worse, judgment came quickly in the desert, where the line between life and death was as thin as a blade of grass. And queens, oh yes, we will speak of them in time, but even now, know this. In Nubia, a woman could own land, command armies, lead rituals to the gods. This was not a world of softness. It was fire, burning, clean, and bright. Let's pause here for a moment. The fire crackles softly, and we rest beneath the stars. A wide expanse stretches before us, a Nubian settlement nestled between towering red cliffs and a lazy bend in the river. Smoke rises gently from cooking fires, carrying the scent of roasted grain and spices. The air shimmers with heat, distorting the edges of mud brick homes and the distant silhouettes of date palms. You, listener, may be tucked into soft sheets, your air cooled, your stomach full, but spend one morning in ancient Nubia, and you would beg for shade, for water, for rest, because their survival was a ritual, and living was an honor earned daily beneath the sun. The boy with the reeds stumbles, his burden suddenly too much. He falls to his knees, the rough sand biting into his skin. For a moment, despair threatens to overwhelm him. But then, a hand on his shoulder, an older woman, her face etched with lines of wisdom, helps him to his feet. She takes half his load without a word, and together they continue their journey. This is the way of Nubia. Strength shared, burdens divided, community forged in the crucible of the desert. Night falls, a blessed relief from the day's oppressive heat. Families gather around small fires, voices low as they recount the day's trials and triumphs. A young girl, no more than 7, listens intently as her grandmother weaves tales of ancient queens who led armies and communed with gods. The child's eyes grow wide, imagining herself adorned in gold, commanding respect with a mere glance. In Nubia, even the smallest dreamer carries the seeds of greatness. Dawn breaks, painting the sky in hues of amber and rose. The air is cool, a fleeting respite before the sun reclaims its throne. Already, the settlement stirs to life. Fishermen check their nets, hoping for a bountiful catch. Craftsmen stoke their forges, preparing for another day of creation. And there, on the outskirts of the village, a group of warriors trains. Their bodies move in perfect unison, spears flashing in the early light. They are the guardians of Nubia, ready to defend their land against any who would threaten it. For in this harsh land, strength is not just admired, it is essential. The sun climbs higher, its heat intensifying with each passing moment. A caravan approaches from the distant horizon, laden with goods from far-off lands. Excitement ripples through the settlement. Trade brings not just material wealth, but news, stories, and glimpses of a world beyond the desert's edge. But make no mistake, while Nubians may welcome outsiders, they hold fast to their own identity, their customs, their beliefs, their very way of life. These are not easily swayed by foreign influence. In the heart of the settlement, A group of women gathers at the communal grinding stones. Their hands work tirelessly, turning grain into flour that will feed their families. But this is more than just labor. It is a sacred act. With each turn of the stone, they whisper prayers to the gods, asking for blessings and protection. For in Nubia, the spiritual and the mundane are intertwined. Every task, no matter how small, carries the weight of ritual. As the day wears on, the heat becomes almost unbearable. Yet still, life continues. Children play in whatever shade they can find, their laughter a defiant melody against the harsh backdrop. Elders sit in the doorways of their homes, watchful eyes taking in every detail of their world. And there, in the distance, a storm gathers. Dark clouds mass on the horizon, promising rain. The entire settlement holds its breath, hope rising like a tide. For in Nubia, water is life, and life, in all its forms, is cherished. Night falls once more, bringing with it a chorus of unfamiliar sounds. Hyenas laugh in the distance, their eerie calls echoing across the desert. Scorpions scuttle through the sand, their presence a constant reminder of the dangers that lurk in this unforgiving land. Yet the Nubians sleep soundly, secure in the knowledge that they have survived another day, that they have earned their place beneath the stars. For this is Nubia, a land of sun and stone, of struggle and survival, a land where every breath is a victory, every heartbeat an act of defiance against the elements. You, listener, may think yourself strong, may believe you could endure such hardships, but spend just one day in ancient Nubia, and you would understand the true meaning of resilience. For here, life is not given, it is earned. With every drop of sweat, every calloused hand, every scar etched into sun-darkened skin. This is Nubia. You would not last a day. Imagine waking before dawn, your bed a straw mat laid over packed earth. The air is already warm. The goats bleat low behind the reed fence. Your mother stirs the embers from last night's fire, and your father sharpens a copper blade with the edge of a river stone. You are not royalty. You are the bones of the kingdom, one of thousands whose daily labor built the great Nubian cities stone by stone. Let's pause here for a moment. The fire crackles softly, and we rest beneath the stars. A young black Nubian boy with a shaved head washes his face at a clay basin. Behind him, a woman ties bundles of dried The scene is one of quiet industry, a family preparing for the day ahead. Grain was the thread that held life together in ancient Nubia. It was more than sustenance. It was the currency of survival, the offering to the gods, the measure of a good harvest. Millet and barley were ground by hand, not with machines, but with slabs of stone rubbed until fingers bled. The fine dust clung to your eyelashes, a constant reminder of the labor that sustained you. Your shoulders ached before breakfast, the price paid for the day's bread. Yet without this toil, there was no bread, no porridge to fill hungry bellies, no offering at the ancestor shrine to ensure continued blessings. The work was hard but necessary, a daily ritual as old as the Nile itself. And meat, it was a rare luxury reserved for moments of significance. Only if an elder passed on, their life celebrated with a feast to honor their memory, or if a warrior returned victorious, the spoils of battle shared among the community. The rest of the time, you made do with goat's milk, wild greens gathered from the riverbanks, dried fish if you were lucky enough to live near the water's edge. It was a life of lean pride, every morsel earned, every day a testament to resilience. A black elder in Nubian linen lifts a flat loaf of sorghum bread from a hot rock. A girl claps softly nearby, the sun casting long morning shadows. The aroma of freshly baked bread fills the air. A simple pleasure in a world of hard work. But there was joy, too. Life in ancient Nubia was not all toil and struggle. Evenings were sacred. A time when the community came together to celebrate, to remember, to dream. Drums called to ancestors, their rhythms echoing across the desert night. Dancers celebrated rain or harvest, bodies moving in sync with the pulse of the earth. And stories, the stories. They were passed not through books, but through voices weathered like river clay. Let's pause here for a moment. The fire crackles softly, and we rest beneath the stars. A circle of children seated under a baobab tree. An elderly woman gestures with her hands as she tells a tale, her eyes glowing with the magic of memory. The children lean in, captivated by words that paint pictures of a world both familiar and fantastical. You would hear of the Nile's moods, of how the great river could bring life or destruction with each passing season. Tales of lions that watched villagers from the dark, their eyes gleaming in the moonlight, both feared and revered, and always, there were stories of kings. Kings who ruled with both crown and blade. Because in Nubia, kingship was not mere ceremony. It was duty, heavy as the stone blocks that built their temples. A king was expected to be strong, wise, and seen. He could not hide behind palace walls. Removed from the people he served? No. A Nubian king hunted with his soldiers, sharing in their triumphs and hardships. He prayed before battle, beseeching the gods for victory and protection. It was the king who decided when the iron bell would ring, a sound that echoed through the kingdom, signaling war and calling men to arms. And sometimes, when the crops failed, or the sun scorched too long, leaving the earth cracked and barren, he would offer himself. Yes, there were whispers, passed in hushed tones around evening fires, of kings who gave their own lives to please the gods and restore balance. It was the ultimate sacrifice, a reminder that even the most powerful were servants to forces greater than themselves. Let's pause here for a moment. The fire crackles softly, and we rest beneath the stars. A shadowed Nubian temple interior comes into view. A mural shows a king kneeling with open arms before a lion-headed deity. The image is both beautiful and terrible, a testament to the thin line between the divine and the mortal in Nubian belief. Some kings were believed to be born from the gods themselves, their right to rule etched in their very blood. Others were chosen by omen, their destinies foretold in signs written across the night sky. Still others were selected through the dreams of high priestesses, women whose connection to the spirit world guided the fate of nations. But divine origin or not, a king's position was far from secure. If he failed in his duty, if drought came and withered the crops, if enemies swarmed from the north, threatening all they held dear, the people would not wait long to replace him. Leadership in Nubia was not for the weak, nor was it for the soft-hearted. It required a strength of will as unyielding as the desert itself. Because everything, the grain, the goats, the forges, the temples, it all depended on balance, and the king was the scale upon which that balance was measured. Let's pause here for a moment. The fire crackles softly, and we rest beneath the stars. A Nubian king stands alone at the edge of a cliff at sunrise, his silhouette strong against the desert sky. The weight of an entire kingdom rests upon his shoulders, visible in the set of his stance, the tilt of his chin. But even those born outside royalty carried weight in Nubian society. A metalsmith's hand had to be precise, for one mistake could ruin an entire spearhead, leaving a warrior vulnerable in battle. A potter's eye had to measure water by memory, knowing that too much or too little could mean the difference between a vessel that held and one that cracked. A herder had to read hoofprints, like books, tracking their flock across vast stretches of unforgiving terrain. Each role, no matter how humble, was vital to the survival of the whole. There were no luxuries for most. Life was not measured in gold or jewels, but in the satisfaction of survival, in the rhythm of days that followed the rise and fall of the sun, in the honor of knowing that the ancestors watched over you, approving of your toil and your perseverance. And yet they built pyramids, forged iron when much of the world still used bronze, held empires at bay, standing strong against invaders who sought to claim their land and wealth, all while living from grain and goat, all while rising before dawn to grind millet on stone slabs, all while dancing under stars that had watched over their ancestors for countless generations. Let's pause here for a moment. The fire crackles softly, and we rest beneath the stars. A wide shot of Nubian workers in a quarry comes into view. Sweat glistens on their backs as they chisel sandstone blocks under the morning sun. Their labor is back-breaking, yet there is a sense of purpose in every movement, a pride in the knowledge that their work will outlast them. You, with your modern comforts and conveniences, wouldn't last a day here, not because you're weak, but because Nubia demanded your ore, your body pushed to its limits under the relentless sun, your time measured not in hours, but in the tasks that must be completed for survival, your bloodline a living connection to those who came before and those who would follow, your belief, unshakable faith in gods who controlled the flood and the harvest, and those who gave it, who poured their sweat and blood into the sands of Nubia, left behind kingdoms, not written in books that could crumble or burn, but etched into the very bones of the earth. Their legacy lives on in the stars that still shine over ancient ruins, in the DNA carried by their descendants, in the stories that refuse to be forgotten. This was Nubia, a land of harsh beauty and unyielding strength, a civilization that rose from the desert, built on grain and goats, on iron and will. Its people were the true treasure, more valuable than any gold buried in a pharaoh's tomb. And as the fire dies down, as the stars begin to fade with the approach of dawn, remember this: you carry a piece of that strength within you, for we are all, in some way, children of those who came before, those who built empires with their bare hands, who left behind wonders that still make us pause in awe. Let the crackling of the fire fade. Let the weight of history settle around you like a cloak, and know that in every sunrise, in every challenge you face, you honor those ancient Nubians who showed the world what it truly means to endure. In Nubia, to fight was not always a choice. It was a birthright. Enemies came not just from the north, but from within. Other clans, other cities, other kings who believed they were chosen by the gods. And so, you trained young. A boy was given a spear as soon as he could walk without stumbling. A girl learned to track footprints before she learned to weave. The desert did not allow softness. Let's pause here for a moment. The fire crackles softly, and we rest beneath the stars. The desert was not flat. It rolled in waves. Stone hills, sudden cliffs, jagged ravines. You had to feel your path, move with the wind, smell danger before it appeared. The enemy was rarely visible. They struck from dust storms, from behind rocks, from the sun itself. War in Nubia was not an open field affair. It was ambush, retreat, return. It was grit between the teeth and sand under the eyelids. And always, the drums. Let's pause here for a moment. The fire crackles softly, and we rest beneath the stars. The bow was the Nubians' pride. Curved, compact, deadly, they could shoot from horseback or foot. In silence, at night, even the Egyptians feared it. In papyrus scrolls, they called Nubian archers the fiercest beneath the sun. And for good reason. They struck quickly, vanished like ghosts. And when they returned with honor. But war wasn't always with foreign invaders. Sometimes it was brother against brother, one city-state against another. A challenge for the throne, a dispute over sacred water paths. And when war broke within, the gods were called upon, especially a... Let's pause here for a moment. The fire crackles softly, and we rest beneath the stars. Apidmark, the lion god, was no gentle protector. He was rage-harnessed. Fury guided, kings prayed to him for victory. Queens called upon him for vengeance, and warriors tattooed his symbol on their chests. A lion rising beneath the sun. Before battle, offerings were made, not just of grain, but sometimes of blood. A ram, a dove, in rare cases, a traitor. The desert watched all of this. It remembered every war cry, every retreat, every oath shouted under stars. Because here, in the burning south of ancient Kemet, to fight was to honor your bloodline, to die was to become a name in the ancestor songs. To survive was to earn your place at the fire. Let's pause here for a moment. The fire crackles softly, and we rest beneath the stars. And when the warriors returned, if they returned, they were honored, but never spoiled. They sat beside farmers, ate with potters, because in Nubia, you were not above the land, you were the land. And the land took care of those who bled for it. The sands of Nubia held secrets older than the pyramids, whispers of battles fought, and one of kingdoms risen and fallen, of gods who walked among mortals in this harsh land. Strength was not just admired, it was essential. Children learned to wield weapons before they could recite their lineage. Mothers sang lullabies of great victories. Fathers taught their sons to read the stars. For in the vast desert, navigation was life itself. The Nubian warrior was not born. He was forged. In the scorching heat of day, young boys ran across dunes, their feet toughening against the burning sand. At night, they learned to move silently, to become one with the shadows. Girls were not spared this education. They learned to set traps, to heal wounds, to command with the authority of queens. For in Nubia, every child might one day lead. Let's pause here for a moment. The fire crackles softly, and we rest beneath the stars. The weapons of Nubia were as diverse as its people. Spears that could pierce leather from 100 paces, slings that hurled stones with deadly accuracy, and always the bow. The Nubian bow was a work of art. Crafted from wood so rare it was worth its weight in gold, strung with sinew that sang in the wind. To master it was to master life itself. Archers trained from dawn to dusk, their arms growing strong, their eyes sharp as a falcon's. They learned to shoot while running, while falling, while half asleep, because in war there are no perfect conditions. And war was always on the horizon. Sometimes it came from the north, carried on Egyptian ships sailing up the Nile. Other times it came from the east, nomadic tribes seeking water and land. But often, too often, it came from within. Nubia was not one kingdom, but many. City-states that vied for power, for resources, for the favor of the gods. And when diplomacy failed, when words turned bitter on the tongue, the drums of war would sound. Let's pause here for a moment. The fire crackles softly, and we rest beneath the stars. The preparations for battle were sacred rituals. Warriors fasted for days, purifying their bodies and minds. Priests burned incense, chanting prayers to Apidmark and other gods of war. In the temples, carved from living rock, offerings were made, gold, cattle. Sometimes, in the darkest of times, human lives, the night before battle was a time of reflection, of fear of hope. Families gathered close. Lovers made promises. Children listened wide-eyed to tales of past glories, wondering if they would soon have stories of their own to tell. And when dawn broke, painting the desert gold, the armies would march, not in neat rows like the Egyptians, but in fluid formations that mimicked the land itself. Archers hidden among camel riders, spearmen blending with the rocks. The Nubian army moved like a mirage, there and not there, and when they struck, it was with the fury of a sandstorm. Let's pause here for a moment. The fire crackles softly, and we rest beneath the stars. But not all battles were fought with weapons. Some were fought with words. In grand halls, where kings and queens debated policy, some were fought in marketplaces, where merchants from distant lands brought news and ideas. And some were fought in the heart, as Nubians struggled to balance tradition with change, to hold on to their identity in a world that was ever. Traders from Arabia brought spices and silks. Emissaries from Egypt brought proposals of alliance or threats of war. Even distant Greece and Rome sent their curious travelers, eager to see the land of gold and mystery. And with each encounter, Nubia grew, adapted, evolved, but it never forgot its roots. In the oldest temples, in the most remote villages, the ancient ways were preserved. The language of the ancestors was spoken. The gods of old were honored, because to lose the past was to lose oneself. Let's pause here for a moment. The fire crackles softly, and we rest beneath the stars. And so, generation after generation, the cycle continued. Children were born. They grew strong under the desert sun. They learned to fight, to build, to lead. Some became warriors, defending their homes with bow and spear. Others became craftsmen, their hands creating beauty from simple clay and precious gold. A few, those touched by the gods, became priests and priestesses. They interpreted the will of Apodmark, of Ammon, of all the deities who watched over Nubia, and in time, they too passed into legend. Their names were carved on temple walls, sung in the songs of the griots, whispered around campfires on cold desert nights. For in Nubia, to be remembered was to be immortal, and the land remembered everything. It remembered the first king who united the tribes, the first queen who led her armies to victory, the first child who looked up at the stars and dreamed of something more. It remembered every battle, every celebration, every quiet moment of despair and triumph. Because the land was Nubia, and Nubia was its people. Fierce, proud, unbroken. Let's pause here for a moment. The fire crackles softly, and we rest beneath the stars. And as we sit here, beneath this vast sky, we too become part of that memory. We are the listeners, the keepers of the tale. And perhaps, in some distant future, someone will sit by a fire and speak of us, of how we gathered to hear the stories of Nubia, of how we honored the warriors, the kings, the common people who lived and died in this ancient land, of how we, for a brief moment, became part of something greater than ourselves. For that is the power of stories. They connect us across time and space. They remind us of who we are and who we can be. And in the end, they are all we leave behind. So listen well and remember, for you are now part of the story of Nubia. And Nubia is eternal. It began with a rumor, whispers carried northward by river traders and scouts, that in the distant south, beyond the first cataract of the Nile, a line of kings had risen. Not imitations, not rebels, pharaohs, dark of skin, heavy of crown, true heirs to the two lands. Let's pause here for a moment. The fire crackles softly, and we rest beneath the stars. The Egyptians had grown weak. Dynasties crumbled. Temples decayed. Priests bickered while famine spread. And so the kings of Kush came north, not as raiders, but as restorers, led by Pai, a ruler from Napata, son of Nubia. They marched upon Egypt, not with greed, but with sacred purpose, to unify, to rebuild, to bring back balance under Mat, the divine order. Pai was not a conqueror in the typical sense. He offered surrender before battle. He allowed defeated kings to keep their lands, so long as they bowed to his divine rule. And when he entered the sacred temple at Karnak, he did not deface it, he cleansed it. He washed the statue of Amun. He performed rituals older than any scroll. He spoke in perfect hieroglyphs, reminding the priests, the gods still live, but now through us. Let's pause here for a moment. The fire crackles softly, and we rest beneath the stars. This was the beginning of the 25th dynasty, the Nubian dynasty, the moment the south ruled the north. Pai's arrival was not sudden. It was the culmination of centuries, of trade, of cultural exchange, of a shared reverence for the Nile's life-giving waters. The Kushites had long admired Egyptian ways. They built pyramids of their own, steeper, more numerous, a forest of stone needles piercing the Nubian sky. But they were not mere imitators. They brought their own gods, their own customs, their own strength, and now they brought salvation. Pai's conquest was swift, but his rule was measured. He did not seek to erase Egypt, he sought to restore it. In the temple of Amun at Gebel Barkel, he inscribed his victory, not with boasts of slaughter, but with prayers of thanksgiving. "I have united the two lands," he wrote. "I have soothed the heart of the West and given peace to the East." Let's pause here for a moment. The fire crackles softly, and we rest beneath the stars. Pai was followed by his brother Shabaka, who strengthened rule from Thebes to Memphis. Shabaka was a scholar as much as a king. He preserved ancient texts. He revived forgotten rituals. Under his reign, the arts flourished. Sculptors carved masterpieces in hard, black stone. Poets composed hymns that echoed through temple halls. But it was Taharqa who would become, perhaps, the most legendary of them all. A warrior, a builder, a protector of Jerusalem itself. Yes, when Assyrians threatened to swallow the ancient world, it was Taharqa of Kush who stood in their path. Let's pause here for a moment. The fire crackles softly, and we rest beneath the stars. Taharqa was more than a pharaoh. He was a visionary. He saw beyond the borders of Egypt and Kush. He understood the shifting tides of power. In the north, Assyria grew strong. Their armies marched relentlessly, conquering, destroying, but Taharqa would not let the lands of his ancestors fall. He forged alliances with the kingdoms of the Levant. He sent armies to support Judah against Assyrian siege. The Bible itself speaks of him, though not by name. He is the king of Ethiopia who came to Jerusalem's aid. He raised temples throughout Egypt and Nubia. At Karnak, he erected the great colonnade, its pillars soaring like palm trees of stone. In his homeland, he built the great temple of Amun at Gebel Barkel, a masterpiece of architecture, blending Egyptian and Kushite styles. He saw the Nile not as a divider, but as a spine, connecting all who lived by its blessing. Let's pause here for a moment. The fire crackles softly, and we rest beneath the stars. For nearly a century, the Kushite pharaohs ruled. They brought stability. They brought prosperity. They brought a renaissance of art and culture. But the world was changing. New powers were rising. The Assyrians, once held at bay, grew bolder. Taharqa fought them to the end of his days. His successor Tantamani continued the struggle. But it was a losing battle. The Assyrians sacked Thebes. They drove the Kushites back to Nubia. The dream of a united Nile Valley faded. And yet, the legacy of the Black Pharaohs endured. In the pyramids they left behind, in the temples they restored, in the stories passed down through generations, history would forget them. Later scribes, Greek and Roman, would diminish or erase their rule. Even today, many textbooks gloss over the Black Pharaohs. They are footnotes, if mentioned at all. But the stones remember. Let's pause here for a moment. The fire crackles softly, and we rest beneath the stars. In Napata and Maru, their pyramids still rise, steeper than those of Giza, more numerous and just as sacred. The kings of Kush ruled not just with power, but with memory. With songs sung beside river fires, with oaths whispered to gods who wore lion faces, and when Egypt forgot them, Nubia remembered. In the lands south of the cataracts, their names were never lost. Pi, Shabaka, Tahaka, they became more than kings. They became legends, ancestors to be honored, examples to be followed. Their story is a reminder that history is not a single narrative. It is a tapestry of many threads, some bright and bold, others hidden, but no less vital. The Kushite pharaohs show us that greatness can come from unexpected places, that rulers can be restorers as well as conquerors, that true power lies not in domination, but in preservation and renewal. Let's pause here for a moment. The fire crackles softly, and we rest beneath the stars. Today, archaeologists continue to uncover their legacy in the sands of Sudan, in the forgotten corners of Egyptian temples. Each discovery adds a new chapter to their story. A story of cultural exchange, of shared heritage, of a time when Africa ruled the Nile. It is a story that challenges our assumptions about race, about power, about the flow of history itself. For the Kushite pharaohs were not anomalies. They were the culmination of centuries of interaction, of trade and diplomacy, of shared beliefs and common goals. They remind us that borders are fluid, that cultures are not fixed, that greatness can arise from any soil, so long as it is nurtured with wisdom and courage. And tonight, so do we. As we sit here, beneath the same stars that shone on Pi and Tahaka, we keep their memory alive. We honor not just their deeds, but the spirit that drove them, the vision of a united land, the belief in divine order and cosmic balance. For in remembering them, we remember a broader truth, that history is vast and complex, that power shifts like the sands of the desert, that today's forgotten kingdom may be tomorrow's shining empire. The story of the Black Pharaohs is not just a tale of the past, it is a challenge to the present, to look beyond the narrow confines of our textbooks, to seek out the hidden stories, to listen to the whispers carried by the wind across millennia. For in those whispers, we may hear echoes of our own struggles, our own aspirations, our own potential for greatness. Let's pause here for a moment. The fire crackles softly, and we rest beneath the stars. The night grows deep. The fire burns low. But the story of the Kushite pharaohs lives on, in the pyramids that pierce the Nubian sky, in the hieroglyphs that adorn forgotten temple walls, in the blood and spirit of their descendants, and now in us. For we have heard their names, we have glimpsed their glory, we have felt the weight of their crowns across the ages. As we prepare to leave this place, to return to our own time and troubles, let us carry with us a piece of their legacy, the courage to restore what is broken, the wisdom to learn from those we once called other, the vision to see beyond borders and across centuries. For who knows, perhaps in some distant future, around another fire, beneath another sky, our own names may be whispered with reverence. Our own deeds may be carved in stone. Our own stories may inspire those yet unborn. And so we rise. We stretch our limbs. We take one last look at the stars, and we walk forward into the night, into history, carrying the flame of memory, the flame that burns eternal, the flame of the Black Pharaohs, the kings of Kush, the rulers of the two lands. May their story never be forgotten again. The sun had barely risen when Taharka's eyes opened. He knew this day would be different. The weight of responsibility settled on his shoulders like a cloak of gold and lapis lazuli. He was young, too young, some whispered, to bear the double crown of Upper and Lower Egypt. But the gods had spoken. Through dreams that shimmered like heat on the horizon, through omens carved in the flight of birds, through the sacred Nile itself, its waters running clear on the morning of his coronation. Taharka was more than just another pharaoh in a long line of gods. He was a son of Kush, born in the shadow of Jebel Barkal's holy mountain. His kingdom stretched from Napata's red cliffs to the lush papyrus thickets of the delta, a realm vast enough to make even the mightiest tremble. Let's pause here for a moment. The fire crackles softly, and we rest beneath the stars. In the cool pre-dawn, Taharka knelt at the river's edge. His hands, adorned with rings of electrum and carnelian, cupped the life-giving water. As he raised it to his lips, droplets caught the first rays of sunlight, turning his arms to living gold. But far to the north, beyond the shifting dunes and scorching wastes, another power stirred. In Nineveh and Azar, cities of brutal stone and snarling lion gods, the Assyrians sharpened their swords. They had tasted the riches of Egypt before, and their hunger only grew. The Assyrians were not men to be taken lightly. Their weapons were forged of iron that could shatter bronze like pottery. Their war chariots thundered across battlefields, crushing all who stood in their path, and their appetite for conquest knew no bounds. When they came, it was like a storm breaking over the desert, swift, merciless, a tide of destruction that threatened to sweep away everything in its path. But Taharka would not yield. He was the living Horus, chosen by Amun-Ra himself, and he would stand against the storm. From the great temple of Karnak to the bustling docks of Memphis, Taharka rallied his forces. He sent messengers racing to the Hebrew kings in Jerusalem, seeking allies against the common foe. And from the lands south of the cataracts came his greatest strength. Nubian archers, their dark skin gleaming with scented oils, their aim so true they could pierce the eye of a hawk in mid-flight. Let's pause here for a moment. The fire crackles softly, and we rest beneath the stars. On the eve of battle, these warriors of the south knelt behind great shields of hippopotamus hide. The desert wind whipped sand around their feet as one archer rose, drawing his bow with the strength of a crocodile. The arrow flew true, vanishing into the shimmering heat where Assyrian banners waved. It is said that before each clash of arms, Taharka would retreat to a quiet place, not to ask for victory, for what true king begs the gods for what he must earn himself. No, he prayed for balance, for Mat, the cosmic order, to be restored, for the scales of justice to find their center once more. Taharka did not seek to rule the known world. His was a nobler goal, to hold it together, to be the bulwark against chaos, the shield that protected the weak from the strong. And for a time, against all odds, he succeeded. City after city felt the sting of defeat as Taharka's armies pushed back the Assyrian team. The pride of Nineveh was humbled before Egyptian spears and Nubian arrows. For years, the southern king held the line, a dark-skinned Horus standing guard over to lands. But time is the enemy even pharaohs cannot defeat. No man, no matter how great, can hold back empires forever. Let's pause here for a moment. The fire crackles softly, and we rest beneath the stars. The years of war had left their mark on Taharka. His once smooth brow was now lined with care. His eyes held the weariness of one who has seen too much death. He stood atop the walls of a battered city, watching smoke rise from temples that had stood for 1,000 years. Yet his gaze was not that of a broken man. There was steel there, still, tempered by wisdom, for the Assyrians, like the Nile in flood, could not be held back indefinitely. They've returned again and again, each wave stronger than the last. Their armies seemed endless, their cruelty without limit. Taharqa knew the bitter taste of retreat, not from cowardice, never that, but from the hard-won knowledge that sometimes, to save the people, one must yield the land. City by city, he withdrew. Each step back was calculated. Each abandoned temple a thorn in his heart. He led his people south, back to the land of his birth, to Napata, where the sacred mountain watched over temples cut into living rock. There, in the flickering light of oil lamps, Taharqa offered one final prayer to the gods who had chosen him so long ago. When death came at last, it found him not in a golden palace, but in the embrace of Nubian sands. They did not bury him beneath a great pyramid of limestone blocks, as the pharaohs of old. Instead, they raised a monument of sun-baked mud brick, steeper, bolder than any Egyptian tomb. A final defiance against a world that sought to forget. Let's pause here for a moment. The fire crackles softly, and we rest beneath the stars. That pyramid still stands, a solitary sentinel in the merciless Sudanese sun. Its shadow stretches long across the desert, a reminder of glory long past. The wind that howls around its base carries whispers of a time when black kings ruled from Thebes to Meroe. For Taharqa did not lose, not truly. He endured. He held open the doors of history so that the world would remember. Remember that for 25 shining years, Egypt bowed to the will of the South. To Kush, to a line of warrior kings who fought with honor and returned to the earth like lions. The story of Nubia did not end with For centuries after, his descendants would rule from Napata and Meroe, raised temples to ram-headed gods, and traded gold and ivory with lands as far as India. The Kushite queens, the Kandakes, became legends in their own right. They led armies, forged alliances, and defied even the might of Rome. Their images, carved in stone, show women of power and grace, crowns atop their heads, enemies crushed beneath their feet. In workshops along the Nile, Nubian craftsmen created wonders, delicate glass beads that caught the light like dewdrops, pottery painted with scenes of hunts and battles, and always, always, the gold worked into shapes of breathtaking beauty, fit for the gods themselves. Let's pause here for a moment. The fire crackles softly, and we rest beneath the stars. But time and the desert are relentless foes. Slowly, inexorably, the kingdom of Kush faded. The temples fell silent. The royal cities were abandoned to the sands. Yet even in decline, they left their mark on the world. For it was Nubian archers who served in Roman legions, their skills prized from Britannia to the banks of the Euphrates. It was Nubian traders who brought the riches of Africa to the markets of Alexandria and beyond. And it was Nubian blood that flowed in the veins of Egypt's last native dynasty, a final echo of Taharqas' legacy. Today, the land of Kush sleeps beneath the sands, but it is not forgotten. Archaeologists uncover new wonders with each passing year. The pyramids of Meroe still pierce the sky, a challenge to time itself. And in the hearts of the Nubian people, the pride of their ancestors burns bright. For they are the children of Taharqa, of Amenarina's the one-eyed queen who made Rome tremble. They carry within them the echoes of a civilization that once rivaled any on earth. Let's pause here for a moment. The fire crackles softly, and we rest beneath the stars. The night is deep now, and the fire burns low. But the story of Nubia, of Kush, of the Black Pharaohs who ruled from the cataracts to the sea, that story will never truly end. It lives on in the whisper of the wind through ancient stones, in the flow of the eternal Nile, and in the dreams of those who know that greatness can rise from the most unexpected places. Sleep now, and may your dreams be filled with visions of golden crowns and obsidian skin, of armies marching beneath the blazing sun, of a time when Africa stood tall and proud, master of its own destiny. For the spirit of Tahaka, the king who held back empires, still watches over the land he loved. And who knows, perhaps one day the sands will shift again, and the glory of Kush will rise once more. Time does not always honor greatness. Sometimes it buries it. Not under malice, but under silence. The Black Pharaohs, kings of Kush, restorers of Egypt, guardians of the Nile, slowly disappeared from the pages of the world. Not because they failed, but because others wrote the story. Let's pause here for a moment. The fire crackles softly, and we rest beneath the stars. The Greeks came, then the Romans, then foreign historians who squinted at skin and lineage and decided who was worthy of a crown. In their scrolls, the 25th dynasty became a footnote, a brief interlude, a foreign interruption. The kings who built temples, who led armies, who balanced the cosmos with ritual and wisdom, were reduced to shadows, not because they were unworthy, but because they were different, because they did not fit the story those in power wished to tell. Let's pause here for a moment. The fire crackles softly, and we rest beneath the stars. And so the world forgot. Textbooks moved on. Museums displayed artifacts with no names. Documentaries skipped entire dynasties. But not all stories sleep forever, because the stones remembered. And in Nubia, beneath the sky, beneath the sand, beneath the silence, they waited. The pyramids of El-Karu, the broken statues with lips full and proud, they were not echoes, they were voices, waiting for ears that could hear again. Let's pause here for a moment. The fire crackles softly, and we rest beneath the stars. In recent decades, black scholars, African archaeologists, and brave historians have returned to the tombs, to the riverbanks, to the stories whispered by griots and grandmothers. They have looked not with foreign eyes, but with ancestral vision. And they have found what was always there. Not just the memory of kings, but the proof of them. The records, the shrines, the bones of black pharaohs wrapped in linen, still scented with frankincense. Let's pause here for a moment. The fire crackles softly, and we rest beneath the stars. Now, slowly, the world remembers again. The kings of Kush are being painted back into murals, their names spoken with respect, their pyramids studied with care, their story told. Not as a side note to Egypt, but as its equal, because Africa's greatness was never confined to one valley. It roared in many tongues. It wore many crowns, and it still echoes. When we listen, the sands of time may have buried their legacy, but the winds of change are now uncovering what was hidden. The black pharaohs, once erased from scrolls, are now being remembered in stone. Their story is one of resilience, of power, of a civilization that flourished along the banks of the Nile. A story that challenges our understanding of ancient history and the roots of African kingship. Let's pause here for a moment. The fire crackles softly, and we rest beneath the stars. Picture a land where ebony-skinned rulers donned the double crown of Upper and Lower Egypt, where Nubian archers, famed for their skill, became the protectors of a united kingdom where dark-skinned pharaohs restored the worship of ancient gods and built monuments that still stand today. This was not a fantasy. This was the reality of the 25th dynasty, the era of the Black Pharaohs. For nearly a century, these kings from Kush ruled over Egypt and beyond. They were not conquerors in the traditional sense, but restorers. They came north, not to destroy, but to rebuild, to breathe life back into temples abandoned, to revive traditions forgotten. Let's pause here for a moment. The fire crackles softly, and we rest beneath the stars. Imagine Pi, the first of these great kings, sailing down the Nile. His fleet of ships, their sails billowing in the desert wind, carried not just soldiers, but scribes, priests, and artisans. He came not just to rule, but to renew. Under his reign, and those of his successors like Shabaka and Taharqa, Egypt experienced a renaissance. Old texts were rediscovered, ancient rituals were revived. The land of the pharaohs breathed with new life, guided by kings from the south. But history, as we've learned, is written by the victors. And when the Assyrians came, bringing fire and sword, the story of the Black Pharaohs began to fade. Let's pause here for a moment. The fire crackles softly, and we rest beneath the stars. Yet, even as their names were chiseled from monuments and their deeds omitted from chronicles, traces remained in the deepest chambers of forgotten tombs, in the whispered legends of river towns, in the very stones of the land they once ruled. For centuries, these traces lay dormant, overlooked by explorers more interested in golden masks than in the true face of history, ignored by scholars who couldn't or wouldn't see the African roots of Egyptian grandeur. But truth has a way of surfacing, like a submerged papyrus rising to the Nile's surface. Let's pause here for a moment. The fire crackles softly, and we rest beneath the stars. In the late 20th century, a new generation of researchers began to look closer. They came with new tools, new perspectives, and most importantly, open minds. They listened to the stones. They read between the lines of ancient texts. They asked questions that had long been unasked. And slowly, piece by piece, the story of the Black Pharaohs began to re-emerge. Excavations at Kerma revealed a civilization far older and more sophisticated than anyone had imagined. The royal tombs at El Karoo and Nuri yielded treasures that spoke of a culture both unique and deeply connected to Egypt. Let's pause here for a moment. The fire crackles softly, and we rest beneath the stars. At Gabel Barkal, the sacred mountain where Amun was said to dwell, archaeologists uncovered temples and palaces that rivaled those of Thebes. Here, in the heartland of Kush, they found evidence of a kingdom that was not a pale imitation of Egypt, but a power in its own right. The statues they unearthed told a story too long ignored. Faces with broad noses and full lips, crowns that combined Egyptian and Kushite elements. These were not foreign interlopers, but African kings who saw themselves as the true inheritors of pharaonic tradition. And as the evidence mounted, the old narratives began to crumble. Let's pause here for a moment. The fire crackles softly, and we rest beneath the stars. No longer could the 25th dynasty be dismissed as a brief interruption in Egypt's history. No longer could scholars ignore the African context of Egyptian civilization. The Black Pharaohs demanded recognition, not as outsiders, but as an integral part of the Nile Valley's story. Today, this recognition is slowly but surely coming. In museums around the world, exhibits are being updated. In classrooms, textbooks are being The Black Pharaohs are reclaiming their place in history. But the work is far from over. For every answered question, new mysteries arise. The full extent of Kushite influence on Egyptian culture is still being debated. The origins of Nubian civilization itself remain shrouded in the mists of prehistory. Let's pause here for a moment. The fire crackles softly, and we rest beneath the stars. And so, the search continues. In the sun-baked deserts of Sudan, in the archives of European museums, in the laboratories where ancient DNA tells its own tale, archaeologists, historians, and geneticists work together, piecing together a puzzle thousands of years in the making. They do this not just to set the record straight, though that is important. They do it because the story of the Black Pharaohs is more than just a historical curiosity. It's a reminder of Africa's central role in human civilization, a testament to the power of cultural exchange and the resilience of forgotten peoples. It's a story that challenges us to rethink what we know about race, power, and the flow of history. Let's pause here for a moment. The fire crackles softly, and we rest beneath the stars. As we sit here, beneath the same stars that shone on Pi and Tahaka, we're part of this ongoing discovery. We're witnesses to the re-emergence of a lost chapter in human history, a chapter that speaks of African greatness, of kingdoms rising and falling, of legacies buried but not erased. The Black Pharaohs may have been forgotten for a time, but their spirit endures. In the proud stance of their statues, in the echoes of their names in modern Sudan, in the very soil of the lands they once ruled, their story reminds us that history is not a fixed narrative, but a living, breathing thing. It changes as we change, reveals new truths as we learn to see with new eyes. And so, as the fire dies down and the night deepens, we're left with a question. What other stories lie buried, waiting to be uncovered? What other voices from the past are calling out to be heard? The tale of the Black Pharaohs teaches us to listen, to look deeper, to challenge what we think we know. For in doing so, we don't just uncover the past, we open new possibilities for the future. The desert whispers, the sands shift, the Nile curves gently, and there, in the distance, it appears Meru, not a mirage, but a tangible remnant. Once a thriving metropolis, now a faint echo of ancient glory. To the untrained eye, its pyramids may seem unremarkable. Squat, angular, clustered together, but for those who truly see, not to the afterlife, but to power, ritual, and the iron heart of Nubia, let us linger here a moment. The campfire flickers softly, and we gaze up at the vast starry sky. More pyramids stand in this place-a-than. In the whole of Egypt, modest in height, yet impressive in their multitude. Erected for monarchs and nobles, high priests and military leaders, rulers of a realm scarcely known beyond African borders, each pyramid housed a sacred chamber adorned with names and celestial symbols. Some remain untouched, others have been looted. A few still stand guard, silent sentinels of time. Who were these ancient builders? What wisdom did they possess? Why did they align their tombs with the rising sun? We can only speculate. But surrounding these stone monuments, life once pulsed with vibrant energy. Meru was no mere necropolis. It was a city of industry and rhythm, where furnaces roared, where hammers struck iron like heartbeats, where sweat and toil forged empires. Meru, here, iron was not a mere commodity. It was the essence of existence. Armaments, implements, fortifications, agricultural tools. Meru supplied Nubia's military might, its fertile fields, and its grand aspirations. Let us pause once more. The fire crackles gently, and we bask in the celestial glow. Outsiders journeyed here and marveled Hellenes, Romans. They struggled to comprehend that deep within Africa, far beyond the charted lands of the Nile, stood a city of such magnitude and influence. They documented their observations, albeit imperfectly, sometimes with wonder, occasionally with skepticism, often with conspicuous omission, for Meru defied their preconceptions. An African metropolis boasting royalty, temples, forges, and libraries, surely an impossibility. Yet it endured, and it flourished, and it concealed its mysteries beneath countless stone spires. Let us linger once more. The fire flickers softly, and we contemplate the vast expanse above. Even in our time, many of Meru's enigmas remain veiled, burial chambers undisturbed, inscriptions undeciphered, ancient incantations lost to time. Still, the desert winds murmur. The pyramids maintain their vigil. The iron slumbers in the earth and in collective memory. This was no mere imitation of foreign grandeur. This was a bastion of sovereignty, of technological prowess, of sacred flames and regal twilight. And on this night, we tread among its shadows and return its essence to the celestial realm. The fire dwindles, the stars wheel overhead, the desert grows still, and we ponder the weight of ages. Meru, not just a collection of stones, but a testament to human ingenuity. Once a crucible of innovation, now a whisper carried on the wind. To the casual observer, its ruins may seem unremarkable, weathered, scattered, half buried in sand. But for those who listen closely, they are chronicles, not of decay, but of resilience, creativity, and the enduring spirit of Africa. Let us rest here a while longer. The embers glow faintly, and we lose ourselves in the cosmic dance above. More stories are etched in these stones than in volumes of written history, subtle in their telling, yet profound in their significance. They speak of queens who ruled with wisdom, of craftsmen who shaped the world with fire, of a civilization that flourished in the heart of the continent. Each crumbling wall holds a memory, each fallen column a legacy. Some tales have been lost, others misinterpreted. A precious few remain intact, waiting patiently to be rediscovered. What drove these ancient Nubians to build? What knowledge have we forgotten? Why did they choose this bend in the river as their seat of power? We can only imagine, but within the ruins of this once great city, echoes of the past still resonate. Meru was not just a place of death and remembrance, it was a crucible of life and innovation, where ideas sparked like embers, where cultures merged and evolved, where the foundations of empires were laid. Here, knowledge was not a luxury, was the cornerstone of greatness. Astronomy, mathematics, metallurgy, statecraft. Meru nurtured Nubia's scholars, its visionaries, and its dreamers. Let us pause once more. The night grows deep, and we contemplate the mysteries that surround us. Traders and diplomats once flocked here from distant lands. Persians, Indians. They marveled at a city that rivaled any in the known world, thriving in a place they had long dismissed as barren and uncivilized. They carried tales of Meru back to their homelands, though often distorted, sometimes with admiration, at times with envy, frequently with a reluctance to acknowledge its true significance. For Meru challenged the narrative of African inferiority. A sophisticated urban center with advanced metalworking, unique writing systems, and monumental architecture, it seemed impossible to those who clung to their prejudices. Yet it persevered, and it adapted, and it left its mark on the tapestry of human achievement. Let us linger here a final time. The stars begin to fade, and we feel the weight of history upon us. Even now, Meru guards its secrets jealously. Texts await translation. Artifacts lie buried. Traditions hover just beyond our grasp. but the land remembers. The ruins stand testament. The legacy of iron and ink endures. In archaeology and in the blood of descendants, this was no pale reflection of Egypt or Rome. This was a beacon of African ingenuity, of cultural synthesis, of spiritual depth and material mastery. And in these pre-dawn hours, we walk among its ghosts and breathe life into long-forgotten dreams. The chill of night recedes. The first birds begin to sing, and we prepare to leave this ancient place. Maru, not just a footnote in history books, but a chapter still being written. Once a nexus of trade and culture, now a bridge between past and future. To the impatient traveler, its scattered remains may seem insignificant, sun-bleached, eroded, lost in the vastness of the Sudan. But for those who truly understand, they are seeds, not of nostalgia, but of inspiration, identity, and the unbreakable spirit of a continent. Let us stand here one last moment. The dawn breaks slowly, and we feel the stirring of countless generations. More questions arise from these ruins than easy answers, challenging in their complexity, yet exhilarating in their potential. They remind us of African queens who commanded respect, of technologies that shaped civilizations, of a world far more interconnected than we once believed. Each shard of pottery tells a story, each fragment of inscription a riddle. Some mysteries may never be solved, others await the right minds to unlock them. All offer a glimpse into a past both familiar and utterly foreign. How did Mero's influence spread so far? What can we learn from its rise and fall? Why does it remain in the shadows of popular history? We must continue to ask, for in the study of this ancient capital, we find reflections of our own world. Meru was not an isolated phenomena. It was a nexus of human achievement, where tradition and innovation danced, where local and global forces intertwined, where the seeds of future civilizations were sown. Here, legacy was not measured in centuries, but in millennia. Art, language, governance, philosophy. Meru shaped the very concept of what it meant to be African, to be powerful, to be civilized. Let us take one final breath of this ancient air. The sun climbs higher, and we prepare to carry these lessons forward. As we depart, we leave more than footprints in the sand. We carry with us a renewed appreciation for the depth and breadth of human achievement. A reminder that greatness can flourish in unexpected places, that innovation knows no borders, and that the story of our species is far richer and more complex than any single narrative can capture. For Meru is not just a relic of the past. It is a challenge to the present and a beacon for the future. It calls us to question our assumptions, to seek knowledge in unlikely places, and to recognize the contributions of all cultures to the grand tapestry of human civilization. And as the heat of the day begins to build, we turn our faces toward home, forever changed by our encounter with the city of pyramids, smoke, and secrets. In the heart of ancient Meru, power flowed through unseen channels. It whispered in the rustling leaves, echoed in the distant roar of lions, and pulsed beneath the feet of those who walked its sacred grounds. Here, the veil between the physical and spiritual realms was thin. Kings and queens ruled not just by the strength of their armies, but by the favor of the gods who watched from beyond mortal sight. Let us pause for a moment. The fire crackles softly, and we rest beneath a canopy of stars. In the dim light of a temple chamber, a Nubian priestess moves with practiced grace. Her hands, adorned with intricate henna patterns, place fragrant incense into a brazier shaped like a lion's head. The walls around her tell stories in carved relief. Suns and crescent moons dance across weathered stone. Among the pantheon of Meru, one deity stood taller than the rest. His name was whispered with reverence, and Ois, the lioness-headed goddess of war, healing, and the scorching desert sun. She was not a gentle presence. Her roar shook the very foundations of the earth. Her gaze could bring life or death. Sekhmet's temples were not mere buildings. They were gateways carved into the living rock, their entrances always facing east to greet the rising sun. Within these sacred spaces, rituals unfolded that bridged the gap between mortal and divine. High priestesses, their voices honed since childhood, did not simply recite prayers. They became living conduits, inhaling the very essence of Sekhmet with each breath. Their words carried the weight of centuries, resonating through stone chambers and echoing across the desert sands. Let us pause once more. The fire flickers, casting dancing shadows as we contemplate the mysteries of the past. A massive statue of Sekhmet dominates the inner sanctum. Her eyes, inlaid with precious stones, seem to glow in the flickering torchlight. A priest, his skin glistening with sacred oils, pours a libation of milk and honey over the goddess's paws. The air is thick with the scent of myrrh and the low hum of chanted prayers. It was said that the great queens of Meru dreamed of Sekhmet before they drew their first breath, that lioness spirits prowled the edges of a mother's womb when a future ruler stirred within. And so, the placement of temples was not left to chance. They were chosen by the alignment of stars, marking a celestial path between heaven and earth. Barefoot priestesses traced intricate symbols in the sand with palm fronds dipped in sacred water. Their songs were not meant for human ears, but to resonate with the very fabric of creation. Let us pause once more. The fire burns low, and the night air grows cool around us. A procession winds its way through the twilight-bathed temple courtyard. Women draped in indigo robes move with measured steps, their hands holding small drums and ostrich feathers. The air vibrates with the rhythm of their soft chanting. Within the inner chambers, reality itself seemed to shift. The air grew heavy with the scent of cedar, frankincense, and the metallic temps of iron dust. Ancient prayers, repeated countless times, seemed to linger in every corner. Vibrant paintings adorned the walls. Lioness-headed queens, winged spirits, and intricate symbols whose meanings have been lost to time. At the heart of it all stood a simple stone seat, waiting for the oracle. She was not always an elder, sometimes barely more than a girl, but when she spoke, her words carried the weight of eternity. Queens listened with bated breath. Generals bowed their heads in reverence. For in Meru, the spiritual realm was not separate from daily life. It was the very foundation upon which all else was built. Let us pause once more. The fire has dwindled to embers, and the stars wheel slowly overhead. A young oracle sits cross-legged in a chamber lit only by a single oil lamp. Her face is adorned with intricate white lines, and a necklace of lion's teeth rests against her collarbone. Her eyes are closed, but her expression is one of intense concentration. In Meru, no aspect of life was untouched by the divine. Wars were not waged without the blessing of Every forge was lit with an offering to the goddess of Newborn children were welcomed into the world, with sacred breath blown gently into their ears, connecting them to the realm of spirit from their very first moments. Even the iconic pyramids of Meru whispered of this deeper truth. They were not mere tombs, but pathways. Each burial was seen as a rebirth, each chamber a map to guide the soul back to the stars. Queens and kings did not simply die. They returned to the divine realm through carefully orchestrated rituals of smoke, song, and sacred fire. The people of Meru believed in this interconnected world with unwavering certainty, not out of blind faith, but because they had witnessed its power firsthand. They had seen dreams that foretold coming droughts, noticed the paw prints of lions, where no mortal beast had walked, and felt the wind shift in answer to a heartfelt prayer. Let us pause one final time. The night is deep, and the desert air grows chill. Under the vast expanse of a star-filled sky, the pyramids of Meru stand as silent sentinels. A solitary figure kneels in the sand, head bowed in prayer. The full moon rises, bathing the ancient stones in silvery light. Meru was never simply a city or a kingdom. It was a nexus point, a place where the tangible and intangible realms intertwine. Here the clang of bronze tools mingled with the whispers of spirits. Royal bloodlines were seen as direct connections to the cosmic order. Though the forges of Meru have long since fallen silent, and its priests have returned to the dust from which all life springs, the essence of this sacred place lingers. The roar of Sekhmet still echoes across the centuries. If you listen closely, carried on the desert wind, you might just catch the faintest trace of an ancient chant, a reminder that some truths are eternal, bridging the gap between what once was and what may yet be. Then step lightly, dear listener, for we walk now through ashes and echoes, across the final breath of a city that once glowed with iron fire and divine song. Great cities rarely fall in a single day. They fade like a drumbeat growing fainter, until only the memory of rhythm remains. So it was with Meru, not with a bang, but with silence. Trade routes shifted, allies disappeared. The world grew louder elsewhere, and the city that once ruled from forge and temple began to dim. Let's pause here for a moment. The fire crackles softly, and we rest beneath the stars, ... The iron cooled. The forges stood still. Smoke no longer rose above the skyline. Where once the air hummed with the song of hammers, now only the whisper of sand could be heard. The great pyramids, once gleaming with gold caps, stood silent sentinels over a fading dream. Some say drought began the fall. Others whisper of war. Still others blame distant empires' woes. Coins pulled power away like tides beneath the moon. But perhaps it was none of these alone. Perhaps Meru had simply served its time. The lion gods grow silent, too, when no one dares speak their name. In abandoned temples, where incense once perfumed the air, dust settled on forgotten altars. The voices of priests no longer echoed through columned halls. Sacred texts lay unread, their wisdom locked away in fading ink. The last kings of Marawa, not well known. Their names are scattered, half carved, half remembered. No chroniclers penned their eulogies. No invading army took credit for their fall. They simply faded, like footprints in wind-swept sand. But their people, their blood, their stories, they did not vanish. In the quiet corners of the kingdom, life continued in softer tones. The rhythms of daily life persisted. Though the grand melodies had faded, descendants carried the old chants into new homes. The iron arts survived in quiet villages. Priestesses became midwives. Warriors became farmers. And the memory of lion crowns lived on in songs whispered at fireside. Let's pause here for a moment. The fire crackles softly, and we rest beneath the stars. In small settlements along the Nile, children still played in the shadow of ancient stones. Elders spoke of glories past. Their words carried on evening breezes. The skills that once built an Empirano sustained families and small communities. Iron was still shaped, but for plows instead of swords. Hieroglyphs gave way to simpler scripts, but stories were still told. Today, Meru stands again, but as ruin, as mystery, as a holy wound in the desert where wind weeps over lost grandeur. Archaeologists come with tools, tourists arrive with cameras, but the pyramids do not speak to all. Only those who listen with their spirit, not just their eyes, will hear the last heartbeat of this place. For in the whisper of the desert wind, in the play of shadows across ancient stone, the echoes of Meru still resound, because Meru never truly ended. It transformed. It became memory. It became legend. It waits. Let's pause here for a moment. The fire crackles softly, and we rest beneath the stars. In modern Sudan, where the ancient kingdom once stood, life continues in new forms. Cities rise, where once there were only dunes. Yet beneath the bustle of contemporary life, the pulse of the past still beats. In the markets of Khartoum, traders still haggle with the skill of their ancestors. The metalwork that adorns modern homescarries echoes of the great forges of and in quiet moments, when the call to prayer fades and the sun sinks low on the horizon, one can almost hear the whispers of long-gone kings. For the spirit of Meru lives on, not in stone and iron, but in the hearts and minds of its descendants. It lives in the pride of a people woe. Remember their ancestors' greatness. It lives in the stories passed down through generations, in the customs that have endured millennia. And so we remember, not just what was lost, but what was never truly gone. A city built by fire, sustained by gods, buried by silence, but awakened again tonight by the warmth of a story and the glow of the stars. In the faces of modern Sudanese, one can see the features of ancient kings and queens. In their songs, the melodies of temple chants linger. In their crafts, the skill of master artisans lives on. For though the great city fell silent, its people did not. They carried forward the essence of Meru, adapting, evolving, but never forgetting. The iron that once forged weapons and tools now shapes the structures of a new age. The wisdom that once guided an Imparano informs a nation, finding its place in the modern world. And in the quiet corners of the land, where the desert meets the fertile banks of the Nile, old magic still lingers. Healers still use herbs known to ancient physicians. Farmers still plant and harvest by rhythms set millennia ago. And in the night sky, the same stars that guided ancient travelers still shine down on their descendant. Let's pause here for a moment. The fire crackles softly, and we rest beneath the stars. For in this moment of stillness, we can feel the weight of history around us. We can hear the echoes of ancient songs on the wind. We can sense the presence of those who came before, their legacy written not just in stone, but in the very fabric of the land and its people. Meru may have fallen, but it never truly died. It lives on in every child who learns the old stories, in every artisan who practices ancient crafts, in every dreamer who looks to the pyramids and wonders. And so, dear listener, as our tale draws to a close, remember that the end of one story is often the beginning of another. The silence that fell over Meru was not an ending, but a transformation, a chance for new voices to rise, carrying forward the wisdom of the pastinto, the promise of the future. For in a great cycle of history, nothing is ever truly lost. It simply changes form, waiting to be rediscovered, reinterpreted, reborn. And as we sit here, beneath the vast African sky, we too become part of that cycle. Listeners, storytellers, keepers of the flame. So let us honor the silence that fell over Meru. For in that silence, new songs were born, and in those songs, the spirit of a great civilization lives on, eternal as the stars above. Draw closer to the fire. For tonight, we speak of queens, not of silk and submission, but of steel and sovereignty. These were not consorts, they were commanders, mothers of nations, voices of war, keepers of the Lion Crown. In most empires, queens sat beside the throne. In Kush, they sat on it. The people called them Kandake, a royal title passed from warrior to warrior, queen to queen, like a blade sharpened by time. And when a Kandake ruled, her voice echoed across the valleys. Her face was carved into temple walls. Her orders bent generals to their knees. Let us pause here for a moment. The fire crackles softly, and we rest beneath the stars. Unlike the queens of other kingdoms, these women did not merely advise. They commanded, they led armies into battle. They signed treaties in blood and gold. They stared down Roman emperors without flinching. Amynarinas was one of them, a name the Romans would never forget. She ruled during the 1st century BCE, at a time when Rome was swallowing lands like fire devours dry grass. Egypt had already fallen. Julius Caesar had come and gone, and now the eye of Rome turned to Kush. They thought it would be easy, but Amynarinas was waiting. Let us pause again. The fire flickers, casting long shadows across the sand. She had lost one eye in battle, but she had not lost her vision. She saw the future, and it would not be Roman. So when Rome's governor dared invade, she struck first. She marched north with thousands. Warriors on foot, archers on horseback, drums echoing across the Nile. They sacked Roman forts, toppled statues of Caesar, and carved victory onto stone. In their own language, not Latin, Rome retaliated, burned towns, destroyed temples, but they could not break Amynarinas. She sued for peace, on her terms, not in submission, but in sovereignty. The treaty that followed granted her kingdom independence. No tribute, no chains, and for centuries afterward, Rome never dared again. Let us pause once more. The fire crackles softly, and we rest beneath the stars. And Amynarinas was not alone. Kandakes came before her, and after. Each one wielded power, not as decoration, but as destiny. In Kush, women could be high priests, army commanders, landowners, oracles. Power was not assigned by gender, but by spirit, by bloodline, by courage. Even the pyramids of Meru stand in honor of these queens, some taller than those of their kings. Tonight, we remember them not as myths, not as symbols, but as rulers, mothers of empires, voices that still echo through desert winds and ancestral dreams. The story of the Kandakes stretches back through time, woven into the very fabric of Kushite society. Long before Amynarinas, there was Shenekti, who ruled in the 2nd century BCE. She was the first known female ruler of Kush, paving the way for those who would follow. Shenekti's reign was marked by prosperity and expansion. Under her rule, Kush trade routes stretched from the heart of Africa to the Mediterranean. Temples rose from the desert sands, their walls adorned with images of the queen herself, standing tall and proud, every inch a ruler. Let us pause. The fire dances, casting shadows that seem to move like ancient figures. After Shenekti came others, Amani Shakito, whose name meant she who lives for Amani. She ruled at the turn of the millennium, a time of great change and challenge. But Amanishakato was equal to the task. She was known for her wealth and her wisdom. Gold poured into Kush under her reign, filling the royal treasuries. But more than that, she was a builder. Her monuments still stand today, testaments to her power and vision. Amanishakato faced threats from all sides. To the north, Rome still hungered for Kushite lands. To the south, Rival kingdoms sought to challenge Kush's dominance, but the queen was undaunted. She fortified the borders, built new temples to honor the gods, and when diplomacy failed, she did not hesitate to take up arms. Her armies marched across the desert, their spears glinting in the sun, their queen at their head. Let us pause again. The fire flickers, and in its light we see the ghosts of battles long past. Then came Aminator, ruling alongside her son. Theirs was a time of great building and restoration. They raised temples and palaces across the land, from Napata to Meru. Aminator was more than just a builder, though she was a visionary. Under her rule, Kush embraced new technologies and ideas. Trade flourished. The arts reached new heights. And always, at the center of it all, she was depicted in temple reliefs as a warrior, a protector of her people. In one hand, she held a spear. In the other, a sheaf of wheat. War and plenty, strength and nurture. These were the gifts of the Kandik to her people. Let us pause once more. The fire burns low, and the night grows deep. The last of the great Kandiks was She ruled in the 4th century CE, as the old world was changing and new powers were rising. But even in this twilight time, the Kandik's strength did not waver. Amonikatash faced challenges her predecessors could not have imagined. The kingdom of Oxum to the east was growing in power. Christianity was spreading across Africa, challenging the old ways. And still, Rome cast its long shadow over the land. But the Kandik was equal to these challenges. She maintained the old alliances and forged new ones. She welcomed Christian missionaries while preserving the ancient temples, and when Axem's armies marched on Kush, she met them in battle, just as Amyarinas had faced Rome centuries before. Let us pause. The fire is but embers now, and the stars wheel overhead. In the end, even Amonikatash could not hold back the tide of history. Kush faded, as all empires must. But the legacy of the Kandiks lived on, in the stories told around fires like this one, in the pride of the people who traced their lineage back to Meru, in the very soil of the land where the pyramids still stand, silent sentinels guarding the memory of queens who were more than queens. They were Kandiks, rulers in their own right, leaders of armies, builders of cities, protectors of their people, and so we remember them, not as footnotes in history, but as the main text, not as exceptions, but not as women who ruled despite their gender, but as rulers who happen to be women. In a world that too often forgets the power of women, the Kandik stand as a reminder, a challenge to our assumptions, a call to recognize greatness wherever it appears. As the last embers of our fire fade and the night grows old, we carry their memory with us. The Kandiks of Kush, queens of steel and sovereignty, mothers of nations, voices that still echo across the centuries, calling us to remember, to honor, and to dream of a world where power knows no gender, where strength is measured by spirit, not by form. And so we end our tale. But the story of the Kandiks lives on, in the whisper of the desert wind, in the flow of the eternal Nile, in the hearts of all who dare to lead, to fight, to build a better world. Draw closer to the fire, for we have spoken of queens, not of silk and submission, but of steel and sovereignty. And in their story, we find our own strength, our own sovereignty, our own crown of lions. Come with reverence, for we now enter the sacred realm of the royal court, a place where gold gleams and judgment reigns, where incense wafts through halls of law, and every breath carries the weight of power. Here, in this hallowed space, words have the power to shape nations and destinies. The court of a Kandik, was not a place of clamor or chaos. It did not echo with the thunderous roar of battle, nor did it ring with the hollow boasts of lesser kings. No, this court radiated something far more profound. It exuded a calm that settled deep in one's bones, a deliberate air that spoke of centuries of wisdom, and a sacredness that touched the very soul. When the queen entered, a hush fell over the assembly. The people rose as one, not out of fear or obligation, but in genuine awe. Her presence commanded respect, her every movement a testament to the power she wielded. Her garments flowed like water, cascading around her in waves of rich fabric. Her face, a canvas of ochre and gold, told the story of her lineage and her divine right to rule. Upon her head sat the double crown, not a mere imitation of Egypt's symbol, but a crown that belonged to Kush, a crown that spoke of sovereignty and strength. Let us pause for a moment, dear listeners. Can you hear the soft crackle of our fire? Can you feel the cool night air on your skin as we rest beneath a canopy of stars? Close your eyes and picture the scene before us. A Kandek, resplendent in her glory, sits beneath a stone canopy. Around her, attendants wave ostrich feather fans, creating a gentle breeze that carries the scent of myrrh and frankincense. She is adorned with layers upon layers of gold jewelry, necklaces that cascade down her chest, bracelets that encircle her arms, and rings that adorn each finger. Her robe, a masterpiece of indigo and crimson, tells the story of her people in intricate patterns and symbols. Around this magnificent figure stood the keepers of tradition, the pillars upon which the kingdom rested. There were priests, their eyes filled with the wisdom of ages, their hands steady as they performed sacred rites. Scribes stood ready, their red pens poised to record every word, every decree that fell from the Kendek's lips. War captains, their bodies bearing the scars of battles fought, and one stood tall and proud, and there offering counsel and support, with the women elders from noble clans, their faces etched with the lines of experience and knowledge. In this court, decisions were not made in haste. Each matter was given the weight it deserved, considered from every angle before a judgment was passed. Debate was not only allowed, but welcomed. For how else could the truth be uncovered? But even in the heat of discussion, respect was paramount. To show disrespect in the presence of the Kandek was to invite the wrath of both mortal and divine. The Kandek's rule extended far beyond mere decrees and laws. She ruled through ritual, her every action imbued with meaning and power. Her rule was a spiritual alignment, a delicate balance between the earthly realm and the divine. Through her veins flowed the ancestral wisdom of queens past, whispered to her in dreams and carried in her very blood. To step into the royal court was to enter a temple. Here, justice could not be dispensed without the presence of the gods. They manifested in the curling tendrils of incense smoke, in the rhythmic chants that echoed through the halls, and in the very breath of those who gathered to seek the Kandite's wisdom. Let us pause once more, allowing the scene to unfold in our minds. We find ourselves inside a palace chamber, its walls adorned with intricate carvings that tell the story of Kush. Massive pillars rise, each one a work of art in its own right. At the center of this grand space, a priest reads from an ancient scroll, his voice resonating with the weight of centuries. The Kandake listens intently, her eyes closed in deep concentration, her hands clasped as she weighs each word carefully. Even the throne upon which the Kandake sat held deep significance. It was not merely a seat of power, but a symbol of the land and its people. The wood from which it was carved had been hauled across vast deserts, each mile of its journey imbuing it with the spirit of the land. Inlaid within the wood was iron from the sacred forges of Meru, forged by master craftsmen whose skills had been passed down through generations. The throne was painted with symbols that spoke of the kingdom's strength. Lions that roared their defiance, crocodiles that ruled the mighty rivers, and rising suns that promised new beginnings. It was said that when truth was spoken in the presence of this throne, it hummed with an energy that could be felt by all. In this court, momentous decisions were made that shaped the fate of nations. Treaties were signed, sealing alliances and ending conflicts. Prisoners stood before the Kandake, their fates hanging in the balance as she decided whether to grant mercy or uphold justice. The distribution of fields was carefully considered, ensuring that the bounty of the land was shared fairly among the people. Poets stepped forward, their words weaving tapestries of beauty that earned them the Queen's favor. And in hushed tones, prophecies were whispered, glimpses of the future that guided the Kandake's hand. As night fell, the palace did not surrender to slumber. The Kandake, barefoot and alone, walked through her gardens under the watchful gaze of the stars. She sought their counsel, their ancient light, a reminder of the vastness of time and the weight of her responsibilities. She spoke to statues of lion gods, their stone eyes seeming to follow her every move. Portraits of her mother, of queens who had come before, listened silently as she shared her doubts and her dreams. The spirits of past rulers whispered on the night wind, offering guidance and strength. In the deepest chamber of the palace lay a room shrouded in mystery and power. No man was permitted to cross its threshold. Here, in this sacred space, a flame burned eternally, tended by ageless priestesses whose very existence seemed to defy time itself. It was to this chamber that the Kandake retreated when the weight of her crown became too heavy to bear. Here, in perfect silence, her spirit merged with the life-giving waters of the great river, and when she emerged, she was renewed, filled with a sense of purpose, a divine command that radiated from her very being. This, dear listeners, was the true source of the Kandake's power. It was not found in the strength of her armies or the vastness of her riches. Her power lay in balance, the delicate equilibrium between the earthly and the divine, between tradition and progress, between mercy and justice. The Kandake ruled not only over her people, but over herself. Her mind was a finely honed instrument, capable of unraveling the most complex problems. Her discipline was unshakable, a foundation upon which the kingdom could rely, and her vision stretched far beyond the horizon, seeing possibilities that others could not even imagine. In mastering herself, she mastered all. The Kandake's rule was absolute, not through fear or force, but through the sheer strength of her character and the depth of her wisdom. Let us pause once more, allowing the weight of these words to settle. Picture, if you will, a sacred chamber bathed in the warm glow of candlelight. The air is thick with the scent of incense and the whispered prayers of generations. At the center of this holy place kneels the Kandake, her head bowed in reverence before a statue of a. The lion-headed god seems to come alive in the flickering light, his radiance matching that of the queen who seeks his counsel. When foreign messengers entered the halls of the Kandake, they did not dare to speak first. They bowed low, their foreheads touching the cool stone floor, and waited with bated breath. If granted the privilege of speech, they chose their words with utmost care, knowing that each syllable might be carved into the very stones of the palace, remembered for eternity. For this was no ordinary court, it was the beating heart of Kush, the center from which life flowed to every corner of the kingdom, and at its core stood a queen, a mother to her people, a living flame that refused to be extinguished by the winds of change or the storms of adversity. In the court of the Kandake, history was written, legends were born, and the future was shaped by hands both gentle and strong. It was a place of wonder, of power, and of profound wisdom, a testament to the greatness of Kush and the indomitable spirit of its queens. Then hush now, For the desert grows still, and the last embers of the fire glow soft beneath the stars, but do not mistake this quiet for an ending. For queens like Thesado not vanish, they transform. The pyramids of Kush still stand, weathered by time, their sharp tips reaching toward the heavens like the fingers of queens still praying across eternity. In the vast expanse of the Nubian desert, these ancient monuments rise from the sand, silent sentinels of a forgotten era. Their weathered stones tell tales of glory and power, of women who ruled with iron wills and hearts of gold. The wind whispers their names, carrying the echoes of their reign across millennia. The names of the Kandakes, Amanarinas, Amanashito, Shanaktakit, echo, now not from thrones, but from stones, from dust, from dreams. These names, once spoken with reverence in grand courts, now linger in the air like a fading perfume. Amanarinas, the one-eyed warrior queen who defied Rome, whose treasure still glitters in the minds of archaeologists. Shanaktakit, who carved her own path to power in a world of men. Their stories, once etched in gold and ivory, now reside in the quiet corners of history. Yet their legacy has never left us. It lives in silence. It lives in lineage. It lives in women who walk without asking permission. In the bustling markets of Khartoum, in the quiet villages along the Nile, in the hearts of daughters raised on tales of ancient glory, the spirit of the Kandakes endures. It's in the proud tilt of a chin, the unwavering gaze of a woman negotiating her worth, the quiet strength of mothers who build empires within their homes. Let's pause here for a moment. The fire crackles softly, and we rest beneath the stars. Imagine, if you will, a wind-swept Nubian pyramid silhouetted at dawn. A single woman in a white headscarf kneels at its base, her hand resting on the ancient stone. In this moment, past and present converge. The weight of history presses against her palm, and the whispers of queens long gone fill her ears. Long after their courts fell silent, the traditions of the Kandaks whispered their way through generations. In the rhythm of drums, in the teachings of grandmothers, in the strength of women who held homes together when kingdoms crumbled, the fall of Kush did not mean the end of its spirit. Like seeds scattered by the wind, the wisdom and power of the Kandaks found new soil in which to grow. In the quiet moments between sunset and moonrise, grandmothers passed down ancient knowledge to wide-eyed children. The beat of drums at weddings and festivals carries the same rhythm that once echoed through royal halls. They became ancestral fire, passed not in books, but in blood. The queens of Kush had carved a memento, the very land. This legacy flows through veins, a burning reminder of greatness that cannot be extinguished. It's not found in dusty tomes or museum exhibits, but in the fierce love of mothers, the ambition of young women who dare to dream beyond boundaries, the respect of men who recognize the power that has always resided in the feminine. Even in exile, their spirit remained. In the songs of Sudanese nomads, in the symbols etched into jewelry, in the fierce pride of daughter Shrew walked Talon, listened to no man's shadow. Across the deserts and savannas, nomads carry melodies that speak of queens who ruled with wisdom and strength. Their songs, passed down through generations, keep the memory of the Kandaks alive under starlit skies. In bustling city markets, artisans craft intricate jewelry, their hands guided by designs that once adorned royal necks and wrists. Each bead, each swirl of gold, tells a story of power and beauty that transcends time. And in homes, both humble and grand, daughters are raised to stand tall, to speak their minds, to lead without apology. They are taught that their worth is not determined by the shadows cast by men, but by the light that shines from within. A light kindled by the flames of queens who ruled millennia ago. Their memory was once buried by foreign historians, dismissed by textbooks, forgotten by distant empires, but the stones did not forget, nor did the Nile, nor did those who came from the same womb of sand and iron. For centuries, the story of the Kandakes was pushed to the margins of history. Western scholars, blinded by their own prejudices, failed to see the brilliance of these African queens. Textbooks reduced their reigns to footnotes. If they mentioned them at all, empires rose and fell, each claiming to be the pinnacle of civilization, ignorant of the greatness that had come before. Yet, the land remembered. The ancient stones of Meru held their secrets close, waiting for the day when the world would be ready to listen. The Nile, timeless and ever-flowing, carried their stories in its currents. And the people, the descendants of those who had lived under the rule of the Kandakes, kept the flame of memory burning bright. And now, you remember that the story of Africa is not just warriors and pyramids. It is queens who ruled without apology, who led armies, who made peace, who stood unshaken before In this moment, as the fire crackles and the stars wheel overhead, you become a part of this unbroken chain of memory. You recognize that Africa's history is rich and complex, filled with triumphs and struggles that go far beyond the simplified narratives often presented. You see the Kandakes not as distant figures lost to time, but as women of flesh and blood, of courage and conviction. Let's pause here for a moment. The fire crackles softly, and we rest beneath the stars. Picture a black African woman in modern business attire, standing confidently before a mural of ancient Kandake. Her posture echoes that of the queens depicted behind her. Proud, unyielding, ready to take on the world. In her, we see the past and the present merge, a living testament to the enduring legacy of the And so their legacy continues, not just in statues, but in you, in the daughters and sons who rise with purpose and speak with clarity. The Kandakes ruled in a world that told them not to, and they did so anyway. This legacy is not confined to museums or history books. It lives and breathes in the actions of those who dare to challenge the status quo, who refuse to be silenced or sidelined. It's in the woman who starts her own business despite the odds. It's in the girl who pursues education with fierce determination. It's in the man who supports and uplifts the women in his life, recognizing their inherent power and worth. They were flame, they were law, they were spirit wrapped in bronze. And even now, when the wind moves through the ruins of Meru, you can almost hear a whisper. The Kandakes were more than just rulers. They were a force of nature, as unstoppable as a sandstorm, as life-giving as the Nile's flood. They shaped laws and customs, led their people through times of war and peace, and left an indelible mark on the world. Their spirit, strong as bronze and bright as flame, continues to inspire and guide. Walk tall, do not bow. You carry the crown, even in silence. This whisper, carried on the desert wind, is a reminder and a challenge. It speaks to something deep within, awakening a sense of dignity and purpose that transcends time and place. It tells us that true royalty is not about thrones or titles, but about how we carry ourselves, how we treat others, how we face adversity. Let's pause here for a moment. The fire crackles softly, and we rest beneath the stars. As night passes over Mero's pyramids, stars wheel slowly across the sky. Time seems to stand still, yet moves inexorably forward. In this liminal space between darkness and light, between past and future, we feel the weight of history and the promise of tomorrow. The legacy of the Kandakes is not a burden, but a gift. It's a reminder that greatness knows no gender, no color, no era. It's an invitation to stand tall, to lead with wisdom and compassion, to build a world where everyone's potential can be realized. As dawn breaks in golden light, illuminating the ancient stones, we are reminded that each new day is an opportunity to honor the past by creating a better future, an opportunity to walk in the footsteps of queens, not by seeking power over others, but by empowering ourselves and those around us. The story of the Kandaks is not over. It continues in you, in me, in all who dare to dream of a world where strength and compassion go hand in hand, where leadership is defined by service, where the crown is worn not on the head, but in the heart. So walk tall, do not bow. You carry the crown, even in silence. For you are the living legacy of queens, who ruled without apology, who led with courage, who changed the world simply by being themselves. And as the fire dies down and the stars fade, remember, the greatest honor we can pay to the Kandaks is not to worship their memory, but to embody their spirit, to rule our own lives with dignity and purpose, to lift others as we climb, to leave the world better than we found it. For in doing so, we ensure that their transformation continues, that their legacy lives on, not in dust and stone, but in flesh and blood, in actions and dreams, in the endless possibilities of a future yet unwritten. Then settle in, dear one. Let the sand cool beneath your feet, and the stars soften their gaze, for our long journey across Nubia, through flame, dust, royalty, and silence, is drawing to a gentle close. You have walked beside pyramids smaller than Egypt's, but more numerous. You have sat beneath the lion god's eyes, and watched Kandaks move mountains with a single decree. You have seen a people who did not mimic Egypt, but rivaled it, matched it, sometimes surpassed it, and you have learned what history once forgot, that Africa's crown was never held by one hand, but many. The tapestry of this continent is woven with threads of gold from countless kingdoms, each shimmering with its own brilliance. Let's pause here for a moment. The fire crackles softly, and we rest beneath the stars. Feel the weight of centuries settling around us, like a cloak of stardust and memories. The story of Nubia is not one of defeat. It is a tale of adaptation, of spirit that shifted when empires fell, of flame that dimmed but never died. Like the Nile that nourished their lands, the people of Kush flowed through time, carving new paths when old ones were blocked. The iron still sleeps in the ground, waiting for hands to remember its song. The chants still echo in the dusk, carried on winds that have never forgotten the taste of incense and myrrh. And the queens? Oh, the mighty Kandaks, they still whisper through the bloodlines of every child who dares to lead, who dares to dream of crowns made not of gold, but of wisdom and fierce love. They are not gone, these ancestors of flame and iron. They are remembering. And now, so do you. With every breath you take, you inhale the same air that once filled the lungs of warriors and scribes, of farmers and artisans who built a civilization that stood toe-to-toe with the greatest powers of their time. Tonight, we have not only told a story, we have reclaimed it. Stone by stone, we have rebuilt temples in our minds. Memory by memory, we have relit the sacred lamps, name by name. We have called our ancestors back from the mists of forgotten history. You have heard the truth carried on wind that once kissed the shoulders of black queens. You have felt the heat of Moreau's forge and the stillness of its final prayer. The sand between your toes is the same sand that once crunched beneath the feet of Amanirenas. As she led her armies against Rome, you may rest. For even the strongest warriors need to sleep. Even the fiercest queens lay down their crowns beneath the stars. But as you close your eyes, know that you do not sleep alone. The spirits of Nubia watch over you. their legacy a lullaby humming in your veins. Let's pause here for a moment. The fire crackles softly, and we rest beneath the stars. The night sky above us is a canvas painted with the same constellations that guided Nubian traders across deserts and sailors down the Nile. Each pinprick of light is a story, a myth, a piece of wisdom passed down through generations. Breathe in. Let your chest rise like the desert hills. Let your spirit settle like dust on sacred stone. With each inhale, draw in the strength of those who came before. With each exhale, release the weight of forgotten histories. You are part of this story now, not just as a listener, but as a keeper of flame. The torch has been passed to you, burning with the accumulated knowledge of centuries. It is yours to carry forward, to illuminate the shadows where truth has long been hidden. Sleep deeply, and when you wake, may the wisdom of Kush walk beside you. May you move through the world with the grace of a Kandake and the strength of a Nubian archer. May your words carry the weight of ancient proverbs, and your actions echo the nobility of those who built pyramids and forged empires. For in learning this history, you have become more than you were. You are now a bridge between worlds, between times. You are the continuation of a legacy that refused to be erased. As the night deepens and the fire dims, remember, the story of Nubia is not finished. It lives on in you, in the curl of your hair and the depth of your laugh. It beats in your heart, a rhythm as old as the Nile and as new as tomorrow's dawn. Rest now, dear one. Let the sands of time sift through your dreams, and when morning comes, rise with the sun, ready to face the world, with the knowledge that you are the descendant of kings and queens, of craftsmen and poets, of a people who looked at the stars and dared to reach for them. Good night, sleep well, and may the spirits of Nubia guard your slumber, whispering tales of glory and resilience until the new day breaks.